So right off the bat, I'm gonna tell you guys that this review is gonna be spoiler filled. But don't worry, I'll let you know exactly when the spoilers will begin. And I'm gonna tell you that I did like this movie. It's a very good movie if you really don't care about comic book accuracy.
I'm here to tell you right now, we don't care.
Let me tell you something.
We don't care.
Jerry.
Alright, so check it. So this movie starts out the same way that almost every Spider-Man movie starts out, with either Peter is happy or Peter is absolutely miserable. In this movie, he's absolutely miserable. All he does is watch TikToks of Ned and MJ, and he's Spider-Man full time. He has no life outside of being Spider-Man. The only type of contact that he has is he has phone calls with the chief of police, who he works closely with, and he's actually been very successful as Spider-Man. He's stopped a lot of major threats, the Hand, Tombstone, and the Scorpion. He's even gotten the key to the city, just like they gave Diddy that one time. And even though he may not have Ned and MJ in his life anymore, he's got a new best friend named Frank Castle, who we all know is the Punisher. And they have this delightful odd couple bickering back and forth relationship that somehow works for the movie and doesn't get annoying at all. In fact, throughout the whole movie, they keep referencing an event that we never actually get to see, where Spider-Man supposedly saves Frank's life in Staten Island. Because as any New Yorker can tell you, Staten Island is the forgotten borough for a reason. Nothing good ever happens there, so it's totally believable that something bad happened in Staten Island. As for the plot of this movie, as I mentioned before, Peter is missing Ned and MJ, but now he notices that his body is changing, and the reason is because of spider puberty, instead of it being the symbiote that Eddie left behind in the Venom movie, or the fact that he could be turning into an actual spider or getting extra arms like they did in Spider-Man the Animated Series, which is what I actually would have liked to see instead of the spider puberty explanation that we got. And to make matters worse, there's a new threat. There's a villain in this movie that is somehow able to control people's minds and bodies and hop from person to person, and Spider-Man cannot sense this villain because of his spider puberty going out of control. And he ends up working with an agency called Damage Control in order to try to stop this new threat. So now that we have the plot of the movie out of the way, I'm a very character-driven guy, so everything that we're going to talk about is going to be about the actors, how good they were in their role, how plot relevant they were, how the movie was, and how enjoyable everything was on a grand scale, according to my opinion. So the last thing that I will tell you about this movie before we get into spoilers is that the score to the movie, the music was absolutely perfect, and the action sequences were great. They were practical. I saw some wire effects, and it wasn't this CGI crap that they've been doing for years. And the story itself was on a smaller scale, not this world-ending large potato threat that we usually see in these films. Another thing that I liked about this film too is that it's not a film that requires you to watch every single Spider-Man film that's ever gone out, or even all these MCU entries. All that you need to know is that in the last movie, Spider-Man made a dumb decision which made everyone forget who he was, including his best friends, in order to keep them safe, and now he's paying the consequences for it. Now, it's time for some spoilers. Make sure that if you don't want to be spoiled, you don't watch beyond this point. Now, the first spoiler is that you need to like, comment, share this video around, sub up to the page, and follow me on TikTok. Now, let's get into our first character. So, in this movie, I'm going to tell you hands down, this is Tom Holland's best performance as Peter Parker and as Spider-Man. One of the major themes in this movie is finding yourself and dealing with depression. And Tom Holland, he's very comfortable in the role, obviously by now, and he is able to depict both sides of this issue. The best examples of this are how he is dealing with this depression, is how he's always walking around with a note that he wants to give to Mary Jane and explain the situation, but he can't quite muster up the boldness to do it. He even pushes himself to go to Ned and MJ's housewarming, where he even watches MJ kiss another man who looks notably older. He looks like he's like 40 years old and got kids Zendaya's age. The best part of this actual scene for me though was what was happening in the theater, because in the theater that I was when I sat next to some young kid and he was going in. He was like, "Oh no, Spider-Man just lost his girl. Oh God." And I gotta say, I was agreeing with that young man. I definitely would have switched off to Peter Parker and switched on to Spider Hands. I would have let the spider puberty overtake me, and I would have definitely fought that dude, whether she remembered me or not. I know for a fact on the outside he was about to shed that one tear that Denzel Washington did in Glory. And on the inside, I'm sure Peter was like, "No!" The thing is, Peter was so depressed that he didn't even put on a Spider-Man costume. He left the party and just was free swinging through the city in his regular clothes, just being depressed. My guy Peter did not care who found out that he was Spider-Man. Really, when you think about the vulnerability in the performance, when Peter really thinks that he's able to get MJ back, he goes all out. He tells her that he loves her. He confesses and pours his heart out to her, only to get rejected. But at the same time, I said that performance really captured the desperation in this young man's heart, and I thought that that was absolutely great to watch and what I was looking for. And the fact that Spider-Man is having this positive effect on people around him despite needing encouragement himself. Best example of this is, look at Frank Castle. He's a much lighter person as a byproduct of being around Spider-Man, and Spider-Man is even able to get through to the main villain, Jean Grey, by being vulnerable, not by just powering through and beating her up with his new spider powers, which typically happens in these types of films. I love the fact that they didn't go the cliche Disney route. Spider-Man, by the end of this movie, he's able to do his secret handshake with Ned, and Ned, I think, starts remembering who he is, but he doesn't get back MJ. And even though he kissed her, he has to live and deal with the depression and start the friendship all over from square one with her, which I thought was an absolutely fantastic narrative decision. I loved everything about Tom Holland's performance. As Spider-Man, he was doing quips, he had his little stretches going on, he was naive enough, but also very smart, and he had his gaming PC on deck, making his clothes and making all these little upgrades. He even used his gaming PC to make himself a little patch so that he could block the genes that were causing him to crash out. I actually loved it when he lost control of his powers and he threw the Scorpion into that car and almost slammed out a police officer. All these were natural progressions of a young man trying to find himself while desperately struggling to find where he belongs. And he already lost Aunt May. He really didn't have a good friend who was stable in his life to really help guide him through these things. And that's why this movie ranks as one of my favorite live-action Spider-Man movies of all time. Character progression that we saw really made all the difference in telling this story, especially with our main character Peter Parker, who I feel in most movies has been pretty static. Next, character. Frank Castle was easily my favorite character in Spider-Man Brand New Day. He literally stole the scene in every scene that he was in. His constant bickering with Spider-Man was hilarious, and he maintained his rugged exterior. He was another hero that was always wanted to do things a more violent way. He kept his same rugged way of speaking. He was like, yeah, man, I'm gonna do what I want to do. I just do my thing. I just shoot. I get my gun. Although I will say that he was definitely nowhere near as hardcore. He was definitely dialed down and way more comedic. He was definitely the pun, but in this movie he had his Punisher moments, especially when he was shooting the Hulk and when he flipped out when MJ tried to ask him about his family. Also, the way that he blasted Spider-Man at the end of the movie also was pretty gangster. I mean, Spider-Man was getting through to Jean Grey, and then my man Frank Castle, he turned into my boy Mike when he picked up the sniper. He just started blasting. Almost made Spider-Man into a Hindu, the way that this man was shooting. Had Spider-Man on the floor like,
I broke my back.
What do you mean by that?
My back is broken.
What, a vertebrae or what portion?
Spinal.
Also, when you think about it, the Punisher was a great wingman. He kept Spider-Man from cheating on his girlfriend. That's why he shot him in the back. The best scenes, though, were when Frank Castle was at the actual hospital and he slept there and he comforted Spider-Man, and he even had a plan to put on a mask and pretend to be Spider-Man, which led to a very warm moment where Spider-Man got to see how many people really loved him and appreciated what he did up in the city without the pressure of being Spider-Man and having to deal with the crowds. Even a little Spidey hands that the kid gave him was really great. My only thing with this movie was that there was a notable time jump. I don't know if what happened with Peter affected the image of Frank Castle, but the fact that the police weren't chasing Frank Castle and he wasn't public enemy #1 was a little bit jarring. It was just like he went from being the most hardcore, hardened shooter to becoming a beloved superhero in his own right within the city, and nobody had a problem with him or the things that that he had done up until this point. But the levity and the humor was very appropriate for the story, and I have to say Frank Castle is my favorite Spider-Man of all time. Sorry Toby, sorry Andrew, sorry Tom Holland. Y'all cannot compare. At this time, if you're really enjoying this review, make sure that you like, comment, share, sub up to the page, and follow me on TikTok. Come on guys, I'm really broke out here like Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man, not like this gaming PC Tom Holland that we got. Hit all the buttons so that I could get paid and make you guys even more content that you guys will enjoy. Next, character. We're gonna talk about Sadie Sink as Jean Grey. So arguably, you can definitely say that Sadie Sink's Jean Grey character was comically inaccurate, but it was very plot relevant, and I did enjoy her performance. Wasn't the greatest, but I did enjoy it. See, Jean Grey was never in the Brand New Day comic series, and everything that she did was just for this movie. It was not something that actually happened in the actual film. And while I did enjoy her character, I felt like, you know, they really dialed her back and nerfed her because she only had one set of her abilities. She was only telepathic, where she was able to hop from body to body and control people within a certain radius. You know, she was basically like Vecna minus the 80s music power-up that she had in Stranger Things. And when it comes to her actual role in this whole film, you know, I felt like it was a real big stretch to bring us into the X-Men era. You know, I like the fact that Spider-Man was able to come up with the whole computer chip inhibitor and put it on her and make it universal, which, side note, is gonna be a really bad thing because that's gonna come up later. I think that's gonna lead to the inhibitor collars that is used in the X-Men series. I want to see Peter's face when he figures that one out, like that his little invention of an inhibitor chip is responsible for mutant slavery. The whole thing is that she's out here trying to find her sister, only to find out that the agency that Spider-Man's been working with is the ones who slimed out her sister. Once she finds that out, she understandably crashes out, and she like freezes everybody in Scarlet Witch fashion in New York City, at least part of the city. And it takes Spider-Man fighting his own demons to become his superpowered Spider-Man self and accept every part of himself and get a hockey broom where he can now break swords and spin all these organic webs and not be crashing into things like he was earlier in the story. And most importantly, he was able to kick down one reinforced door just to get to Jean. He let her into his mind and she got to speak to Aunt May. And I don't know if anybody else noticed this, but baddies are more effective than the police. When you look at these past two films, the Thunderbolts and Spider-Man Brand New Day, a baddie speaking consolingly to a crash out has saved the city from impending doom. Baddie therapy may be the path forward to world peace, and we have Marvel to thank for it. And I like the fact that she did get away. We see her on a bus, and it seems like she going north on that Taconic, going up into Westchester, and we all know who's up there and whose mansion is up there. My only thing is with Sadie Sink, she looks very young. I know that she's not like that super young anymore, but like if Hugh Jackman is going to be playing Wolverine, he better just be a mentor. I don't want my man turning into Master Roshi / Jiraiya, fiending over like no teenage girl. Like, that's not cool. So also, even though Jean was nerfed, I still feel that she was able to be an effective threat because you couldn't tell where she was because she kept hopping body from body to body, and we really didn't know until about 2/3 into the movie who she really was and what she was after. I like the fact that because of her mutant abilities, it really was a way to get your average New Yorker really involved in this conflict. I love the way that she was able to hop into Mary Jane's mind, and the way that she was able to do that, it fooled me and it fooled Tom Holland. It felt so genuine. The way that she was picking apart Peter's psyche, effectively toying with him and baiting him into thinking that Mary Jane was actually starting to remember him. While she wasn't my favorite character, or I wasn't blown away by her acting per se, I felt like narratively they made all the right moves utilizing this character. As far as an antagonist from the X-Men, she's not the person that I would readily think of being an antagonist against Spider-Man in a Spider-Man movie. But hey, it worked and I'm happy about it. I will say this though, if they really wanted to go the X-Men route, there are at least 3 other X-Men that I would have chosen to have as antagonists in a Spider-Man movie other than Jean Grey. The first one would be Beast, and Beast has at least 3 mutations, and I would like for him to go through that whole cycle in this film. I would like to see him have the inverse type of transformation, whereas it leads to something more negative than like Peter Parker's transformation did for him. And then Beast could have went through a metamorphosis like Spider-Man was going through, where he gets the bulky frame, and then finally, in an attempt to reverse it, he could have went and turned into the blue furball that we all know and love. Beast is arguably much smarter than Spider-Man, and he has very good agility, and he has some of a similar power set to Spider-Man, so I feel with his increased intelligence and his physicality, he could have been a much better fit as an antagonist for Spider-Man. The second choice that they could have gone with, other than Jean Grey as the antagonist here, could have been Remy LeBeau, Gambit. He has the kinetic energy power and increased agility that can help him keep up with Spider-Man, and the fact that he uses his kinetic energy in such a way that pretty much anything that he touches he can make into a bomb, which would have been really great, seeing how Spider-Man's spider puberty was disabling his spider sense. It would have been very tricky for him to go up against somebody with that type of power. Seeing Gambit in this movie would have been an excellent tie-in to what's happening currently in X-Men 97 Season 2. The last X-Men related character that they could have went with to introduce mutants into the universe could have been the master of magnetism himself, Magneto. Magneto, with just his base power set, he would definitely fall into the category of big potatoes, but you know, if they nerfed him like they did Jean, he still would be very much a formidable opponent for Damage Control and Spider-Man and Frank Castle to team up against. So guys, if you were liking this review so far, make sure that you do me that favor. I want to get paid. Make sure that you are commenting, and subbing up to the page, and follow me on TikTok, because right now we're gonna get into our next character. Mary Jane, played by Zendaya, was actually good. Now, I've never been a huge fan of Zendaya. I haven't seen a lot of the things that she's famous for being in. I didn't watch The Odyssey, I didn't see Euphoria, and I didn't watch Dune. So I'm not a world-renowned expert on what her acting talents are, but in this film, and of all the Spider-Man films, I felt like she did the best job up in here. I mean, the way that she was playing the amnesia, that she didn't know Tom Holland. I mean, the way that she was acting like she didn't know Tom Holland, that's the same way I would act if my girl went to a Chris Brown and Usher concert and she went on stage with Chris Brown. As soon as she get home, I don't know who you are. You better get up out of here. I'm gonna call the cops. But anyway, when it comes to her acting, when Jean Grey was in her mind and controlling her, and she was talking to Peter, like, for that moment, I thought that she was legitimately starting to remember Peter. I was so shocked. I said, this girl Zendaya can actually act? Okay, that's what's up. And when it comes to her character, she was how you would expect a real person to act. Sure, she found the note. She asked Peter, why didn't you tell me? She was like, all right, gang, but we can't have a relationship. We could maybe be friends, you know, maybe try to build some, but like, gang, I don't really know you like that. And Peter's like, but I love you. And she's like,
wait a minute. Who are you?
Also, I'm Zendaya, so I expect you to fall in love with me. And then proceeds to kind of brutally lets this man down. The thing that did make me mad, though, is that she asked this man for a ride. And that's how I know the people who wrote this movie are not from New York, because every New Yorker knows that there are at least 2 ways to get back into the city for free. The first thing that you can do is hop a turnstile and get up on a train before it leaves. The second thing that you can do is find a bus somewhere, and all you got to do is go in the back door, and you just sit up in the back of the bus. Maybe you do that for a couple buses to get around to wherever you need to go, and so that you don't have to pay, all you got to do is yell out with all your might, back door, and they're gonna open that back door, and you will have freely made it back home. Everybody does that in New York. Don't nobody be paying for buses no more.
Boy, if you don't...
Unless you're on that express bus, though. But the express bus is pretty nice. You better pay for that. Anyway, they didn't do the Disney thing where she just kisses him and, you know, remembers everything. And she even encourages him to get to know Ned again and to let him know. And she wasn't hopelessly in love girl that was just dying to run back into Peter's arms. And that made this narrative so much more real. Next, character and organization. So next we're going to talk about Bill Metzger, who who was the head of damage control. And right off the bat, I did not trust this guy. Not only because he's black, but because of the fact that I've seen him in Severance. He was also a bad corporate guy there. And the whole explanation of what was happening there, he kept telling Spider-Man that the hand was really some kids who needed some guidance, and that they like to examine different superpowered individuals and see how they could best utilize these different powers. And the crazy thing is, after hearing all of that, I would have been like,
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
I mean, what are you talking about? You like to examine powers, and what happens after you examine these powers? I mean, I shouldn't really even be surprised, because Peter ain't black. Miles would have never fell for that. His black man senses would have been on point as soon as he entered a municipal building. The crazy thing is that Spider-Man does actually have a danger sense, his spider sense. Seemed like he just turned that thing off throughout that whole conversation. Metzger was literally playing in Peter's face the whole time. See, what their real goal was trying to use Jean's powers so that they could give it to their agents and weaponize it, which all screams corporate greed, bad guy. Don't trust them. As an antagonist though, I felt like the actor that played Bill Metzger was basically the same guy he was in Severance, so I didn't feel like there was anything like crazy that he brought to the role, but he was effective in that role. Next, character. So this next character that we're going to talk about is Yelena from the new Avengers or the Thunderbolts movie, and she is effectively the new Black Widow. So basically Peter goes to her and he's trying to get some intel, and she doesn't have any intel, but she hangs out all day at a bathhouse like a true Russian. And when Spider-Man comes in to get that intel, she tells him to disrobe. Now, I don't know what's wrong with Peter. He was asking a lot of questions. I would have been like,
Oh, say less.
the movie would have ended a lot sooner, because I just would have been raising her up. While it's always a joy to see Florence Pugh in any capacity, she ultimately really did nothing to further the narrative. Last, characters. The Hulk was in this film, but he was just a spectacle. He really didn't do much. I mean, I understand that Bruce Banner was more important to this narrative than the actual Hulk was, because of the whole genetics and inhibitor chip conversation that they had. But again, like I said before, if you have Beast in this actual story, then you don't even need to have Jean Grey or Bruce Banner or the Hulk. And I gotta say, outside of Avengers, the first movie, I have never liked Mark Ruffalo and his Hulk. The best Hulk to me is always going to be Ed Norton's Hulk. That was the real Savage Hulk. This was Hulk diet. The last character that we're going to speak about is Ned. Ned was pretty much stock standard as he was in all the other films, but he had less lines and he was a full-time Spider-Man glazer. He even made an app to track where Spider-Man has been and had his own little theory board on who Spider-Man is. The only cool thing that Ned did was the handshake at the end when he started remembering Peter. At the end of the day, the one thing that I think would have made this film even better would have been a Stan Lee cameo. One small minor gripe that I did have with this film before I give you my rating is that there were a number of villains that were featured here that we really didn't get any screen time with, especially my guy Tombstone. I would have preferred to see him in this film. I felt like so that we could have had more time with him, we could have cut some time away from Scorpion and the Hulk. So Spider-Man Brand New Day, if I had to rank it amongst all Spider-Man live action films, it would rank at number 3. I still put Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man 1 and Spider-Man 2 over Spider-Man Brand New Day, because in Spider-Man number 1 and 2, if they actually had villains and they were actual Spider-Man villains, Jean in this story at best was a sympathetic antagonist. As far as my rating for this film, I have to give it an 8.5 out of 10. And I want to thank everybody here for watching, and if you really want to help me out and help me not be broke, please make sure that you like, comment, share, and sub up to the page. Follow me on TikTok, and like I always say, I'm your Black Anime Dad, and I shall see you in the next one. Thank you for watching.